Okay, so what we're gonna learn is that each form tells us about one key feature. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna start by looking at factored form, and we're gonna look at the numbers in the equation, right? So this equation here. So where do these numbers show up in these key features? Let's find out if there's a pattern. Okay, so we're going to see that there is a -5 and a -1. So where does 5 and 1 show up? They show up in here. Okay, and then we're going to go to the next one. So we have a 3 and a +1, and we have a 3 and a 1. Okay, and what we're gonna note here is that we can see that there's a negative sign here. Okay, so the ones that have negative signs are going down. So if the sign in the front is a negative, it means our parabola is pointing down. If it is a positive, it means our parabola is pointing up. Okay? So back to the patterns that we're looking at. So we can see a 1 and a 2, and we see a 1 and a 2. So we can see that our zeros are showing up here, right? So we can see that our factored form is giving us our zeros. But the one thing we need to be careful with is that the form that's here, so this says x -5, it is showing up as a +5. And a -1 is showing up as a +1 in our zeros. So what we need to do is we need to change the sign. Okay, so we can get our zeros from here, but all we need to do is change the sign. So taking our x -5 and x -1, our zeros are 5 and 1. Okay, so just make sure that it is the opposite sign. So then when we go and we take a look at the standard form, let me just write that this gives us our zeros. Gives us zeros, which are also known as our x-intercepts. Okay, so let's take a look at standard form now. I'm gonna grab different colors here. So we're gonna take a look at where our numbers show up in here. So we can see that we have a +4, and it shows up in our y-intercept. -7 shows up in our y-intercept. 3 shows up as our y-intercept. And so on and so forth. So what this is giving us in standard form, it's giving us our y-intercept. Okay, so when we write our standard form, which is y equals a² or ax², sorry, plus bx plus c, our c is our y-intercept. Okay, now again, another thing to note is the negative sign in the front. And the negative sign in the front is telling us which way it is opening. Okay, so if there's a negative sign, it's going down. If there's no negative sign in front of the number here, it's gonna go up. Okay, so now our standard form, we've learned that our factored form gives us our zeros, our standard form gives us our y-intercept. Now let's take a look at our vertex form. And I think we can guess what that's going to give us. Wrong side of the highlighter. So we're going to take a look at our numbers are showing up over here. So we have a -3 and a -4. And we have a 3 and a 4. And we have a +2 and a -1, -2 and -1. Okay, this is giving us our vertex. But again, inside the brackets, we have to change the sign for when we pull it out of the bracket. What that means is when we look, we can see that this one is a -3, but our vertex, it's a +3. So inside the brackets, for us to find our vertex, we're gonna change the sign. Okay, so I'm gonna put that change the X value sign when pulled out of bracket. Okay, so when we pull this out of the bracket, it says a -3 here, it's gonna be a +3. But this one is already outside the bracket, so it's a negative, it stays the same, so it's a -4. And now we're gonna look at again how we're gonna figure out the direction. So if there's a negative sign in front of them, it means that our parabola is pointing down. If there's a positive sign in front of them, it means our parabola is pointing up. Okay? So our vertex form gives us our vertex. So we're just going to quickly go over the start of this page here, and then you guys are going to go through this yourselves. So our summary, our standard form, right? Our standard form we've already seen, it has no brackets. Right, we have the y equals 3x plus 2x minus 7. Okay, that's just an example. So the key feature it gives us is our y-intercept, right? That's our C spot, so that is this. So our specific key feature is that we know our y-intercept. So our factored form. Our factored form has 2 brackets, 2 sets of brackets. An example is y equals 2x minus 7 and x plus 3. So our key feature that it gives us, our key feature that the factored form gives us is our zeros, or our x-intercepts. And so we're going to take a look, and we're going to use purple for this one. It is going to give us here and here. Now remember, when we pull these out of the brackets, the sign changes. So it says a -7 over here. So it is going to be a +7 here, right? It's going to be a +7 for our x-intercept. And we have a +3 here. So it's going to be a -3 here. So it's going to be a -3 for the x-intercept. And then our last one is our vertex form. We have a bracket squared. Bracket, I'm just going to put it underneath, squared. And what that looks like is we have a y equals x minus 4, and that is squared plus 5. So what this gives us is, I'm going to take, we'll just use green again. So it's going to do, actually I have pink here. So it's going to give us the negative 4 here and the positive 5 here. And this is going to give us our vertex. Right, the vertex form gives us our vertex. So what we're going to have to do is when we pull this out of the bracket, the sign needs to change. So it is going to be a positive 4. Okay, and this is our x spot. And because this is outside the bracket, it does not need to change. So it stays as a positive 5. So that's our bracket. So when we take a look at the direction of the opening, it opens when there is a positive at the start. Right, so when there is a positive number at the start. So see how this is positive 3 and this is positive 2. So our example here is we have a y equals 2. It's not a negative, it's a positive. X squared minus 7x plus 2. And it opens down when there is a negative at the start. Right? So this is a negative at the start. So when there's a negative at the start, it opens down. So an example is y equals negative x plus 7 and x minus 1. So we can see that it starts with a negative. So it's going to open down. When it starts with a positive number, it's going to open up. And so what you're going to do is you're going to try to fill out this chart on your own. And so what we have is the first example here for you. So we have y equals x plus 6 and x minus 7. And what we're going to do is we're going to circle the proper form. So we can see here that we have 2 brackets, right? So if there's 2 brackets, we take a look up here and it's the factored form. So we're just going to circle factored form. Sorry, wrong one. This one's factored form. That is not factored form. And our key feature from that is that we have zeros. So our key feature is to put the zeros in here. And we're gonna pick out the specific key features from this equation. So our key features are 6 and negative 7. And remember, when we pull these out, because they're inside the bracket, they switch. So a positive goes to a negative. So positive 6 turns into negative 6. And negative 7 turns into positive 7. And the direction of the opening is up because it is a positive in front, not a negative. Okay, so I want you guys to try the rest of these on your own.